Hi, everybody. Right now, I have my Valentine for this week with me, Chocolate. Fluffy is back into making it into a game and runs downstairs, I think that Chocolate and I will follow him downstairs. And Chocolate loves to hang out now on these Wednesday nights, like he seems to know the lights. Hey, I'm going to get into your lap. And I want to say from Chocolate and Fluffy and from me to all of you, in the spirit of agape love that I think is so important and seems to be missing in this world, that maybe on this Friday's Valentine's Day, that all of you will think about having the pressure in your chest that I think goes right to the heart of your soul. When you think about our fellow humans and the fact that we have been a species on this planet, at least conscious in a so-called Cro-Magnon Homo sapien sapien form, for about 45,000 years, and going back in time in all the other variations. And that someones have for all of these 45,000 years chosen to keep us evolving, standing up mammal primates in the dark about our origin and other life in the universe, except for almost tantalizing like games with us. And for all of you who have been writing me your profound letters of your first time ever talking about what has happened to you in this life, I thank you. And I'm hoping that all of you think about Wednesday nights now at the Earthfiles live stream, that I will try to bring current news, but that I also welcome all of your questions and your emails, your FedExes, your letters in whatever form, because I think that there is a real need for the dialogue about these questions now. It came up at Conscious Life Expo that if the government isn't going to tell us the truth in a hurry, that us being able to talk with each other about the facts of our own lives and what we have experienced and know, it's important. It helps. And so I'm going to let down my agape love, Chocolate Valentine, and Fluffy wherever you are playing downstairs. And I wanted to tell you that at Conscious Life Expo, which was terrifically fun this year, I think I got maybe 4-hour naps each night. There were so many wonderful discussions. And here were the primary questions that I ended up in conversations about. What's going to happen with the scary Wuhan coronavirus? Are the new fast radio bursts that have just made headlines coming from other intelligences in the cosmos? And who or what engraved the star maps on the black basalt doors in Antarctica that Spartan 1 sketched for me? Let's start with recent headlines about the Wuhan coronavirus, now officially named by the World Health Organization as COVID-19. The red arrows point to the circular coronavirus surrounded by a bunch of smaller round appendages. This is a thin section electron micrograph taken at the University of Hong Kong on February 3rd, 2020. This coronavirus, not known to the world before December of 2019, only a couple of months ago, is no bigger than about 20 nanometers. That is 1/20,000th of a micrometer. 1 micrometer is 1/1000th of a millimeter. So small, but so dangerous and lethal. Each human cell it infects produces thousands of new infectious virus particles that can keep spreading into more and more human cells. COVID-19 has now infected more than 50,000 people in China as of today and 27 other countries, and has killed at least 1,300 people, and the counts keep rising. All except 2 so far of the dead are from mainland China. The coronavirus's ability to spread easily has been demonstrated amid the quarantined 3,600 passengers and crew on the Diamond Princess cruise ship in Yokohama, Japan, about 25 miles southwest of Tokyo. The New York Times reported today, quote, "The coronavirus has jumped from ship to shore after an employee of Japan's health ministry who had surveyed passengers on the quarantined Diamond Princess cruise ship in Yokohama has now himself tested positive for the coronavirus. That means one of the health investigators contracted the virus simply by being there at the ship." In addition, 39 new confirmed cases were announced among the more than 3,600 crew and passengers, bringing the total number of infected people on the Diamond Princess to 175, close quote. The number of COVID-19 cases in the United States has risen to 13, 1 in Washington State, 7 California, 1 Arizona, 1 in Wisconsin, 2 Illinois, and 1 in Massachusetts. In a Hong Kong subway station yesterday, February 11th, everyone was wearing masks to keep from breathing the coronavirus in crowds. But the COVID-19 coronavirus continues to spread to places as far apart as Hong Kong and the French Alps, which are separated by 5,900 miles or 9,500 kilometers. How does the new virus spread so far and wide so fast? Tianjin, China, a single department store there, was found to be responsible for hundreds of new cases. Authorities ordered 10,000 people in that part of the city to go into quarantine. In Hong Kong yesterday, February 11th, authorities evacuated dozens of residents from their apartment building when it was discovered that 2 people living 10 floors apart tested positive for the coronavirus. Inspectors thought that an unsealed pipe between the 10 floors was the source of the spreading coronavirus, meaning the virus was going through the pipe for 10 floors. Adding to confusion and worry are the cases where the source of infection seems to be a person who has no symptoms at all. That disturbing probability made news yesterday, February 11th, in the UK, when 10 new cases in France and Great Britain were traced to one businessman who showed no symptoms before testing positive for the COVID-19 coronavirus. And here now are a few scenes of current forced quarantine in China.
抓起来了。
哦，进去了，看到没有？
他们。
哇，太可怕了。
我不喜欢抓进去。
可是他们生病了。
所以他们要去哪里？
But as awful as this is now, there might be some medical relief coming. On February 5th, in this publication, Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology News, was the headline, Coronavirus, Gilead's Remdesivir begins trials as researchers publish positive in vitro results, close quote. Remdesivir is an intravenous antiviral drug not approved for humans, but studies of mice and monkeys infected by COVID-19 have shown that remdesivir can fight the coronaviruses. Doctors in Washington state, where one of the first confirmed cases in the United States occurred, report that when the male patient got worse with aggressive pneumonia after he had been hospitalized for 1 week, his symptoms improved the next day after being injected with remdesivir. Also showing effectiveness against the COVID-19 coronavirus is the already marketed anti-malarial drug chloroquine. Researchers are starting treatment with both drugs in a combined science and medicine effort with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the Chinese Academy of Sciences, the National Center for Biosafety, and the National Academy of Military Medical Research Institute of Emergency Medicine. Let's pray that the antiviral testing of remdesivir and the anti-malarial drug chloroquine are an answer to controlling the COVID-19 coronavirus, and that it can eventually be contained and hopefully eradicated as SARS seemed to be in 2003. And on that positive frequency, let's jump far out into our universe to a galaxy 500 million light years from Earth. That's where, for the first time ever, astrophysicists have detected another fast radio burst, which has been repeatedly emitting every 16.35 days for more than a year. Extremely short and strong radio wave pulses. The FRBs were first recorded in 2007, and astronomers reported the power of that first radio burst was equivalent to 500 million times the power of our sun, but it lasted in this burst for only 5 milliseconds. It might have been some astronomical body that blew up, except that 5 years later, on November 2nd, 2012, in the same place out in the universe, there were 2 more fast repeating bursts. And since then, there have been reported many fast radio bursts. I have done several reports about the cosmic mystery, including on March 30th of 2017, I did an interview with Avi Loeb, PhD, chair of the astronomy department at Harvard University. He told me, quote, "Fast radio bursts are exceedingly bright given their short duration and origin at great distances, and we have not identified a possible natural source with any confidence. So an artificial origin of fast radio bursts is worth contemplating and checking," close quote. And by artificial, he means another intelligence in the universe. Well, now, for the first time, scientists have detected fast radio bursts that occurred once an hour for 4 days and then stopped, only to start up again 12 days later. This cycle repeated every 16.35 days for more than a year, and the bursts are coming from a galaxy about 500 million light years away. Whatever the source is, has become the subject of intense speculation by astrophysicists and astronomers. In the March 9, 2017 Astrophysical Journal Letters, Harvard's chair of the astronomy department, Professor Avi Loeb, proposed that fast radio bursts could be, quote, interstellar light sails pushing payloads up to 1 million tons each, large enough to carry living passengers across interstellar or even intergalactic distances, close quote. Why would we see such intense, rapid radio bursts on Earth? The Harvard University scientist theorizes that to power a light sail near the speed of light would demand a transmitter the size of Earth beaming radio waves with a wavelength of tens of centimeters. The sail has to be made of material that reflects light well in radio wave frequencies. We humans, we are already testing the concept of using infrared laser photons to push light sails toward the speed of light in what is called the Starshot Project. Professor Avi Loeb at Harvard is chairman of the Breakthrough Starshot Advisory Committee. Starshot was first funded 3 years ago with $100 million on April 12, 2016, by Russian venture capitalist and physicist Yuri Milner. And now, I want to share with you a recent discovery about another astronomical question. That star map that Spartan 1 drew for my documentary, Antarctica, Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice. Spartan 1 was a Lieutenant Commander Navy SEAL in August 2003 when he was assigned to go to Antarctica to extract an archaeologist who had been studying hundreds of symbols and hieroglyphs in the huge alien structures. All the symbols and glyphs were precisely 7 centimeters deep in the thick, dense black basalt walls of the alien structures that glowed with green light as he moved through the hallways. The scientist did not understand what technology could make so many complex and detailed symbols similar to Egyptian and Mayan, but were neither. Another great mystery for Spartan 1 were the large 23 feet high, 18 feet thick black basalt doors throughout the vast high 18-foot structures like this one. Each door was marked not by hieroglyphs, but by a large circular ancient black sun with 12 arms radiating from a central circle with 2 90-degree angles at the ends of each arm. Along with the black sun, each door had some kind of star map. Spartan 1 understood that the star maps were different from door to door, but the one depicted here was drawn by Spartan 1 for my documentary, and he implied that he had an actual photograph to trace this star map. Further, on this particular door that Spartan 1 sketched for me, he said the scientists explained that 3 different universes were represented in this star map, and one was the universe that we are in. I now want to play for you a segment from my Antarctica documentary about the star map mystery and a recent discovery, a hypothesis about that star map. Now, look at this and tell me if you recognize anything there.
Yes, I do. It resembles a panel that I saw at the structure in Antarctica. That was the panel that had the star map on it.
And the star map, do you know?
From what they could estimate, it was not only our universe, but 3 universes combined in one large star map. The focal point was what our Hubble Space Telescope has photographed and recorded at that time. Then they correlated what the Hubble Space Telescope had taken photographs of that was not in our universe, but actually a different universe outside, further out than what we think our universe is.
I know that what you just said to me was that we were using the Hubble to photograph in another universe outside of this universe.
Yes, ma'am.
And then another universe.
Yes, ma'am. The way it was described to me, they were taking mathematical equations, formulas, from different points of our universe and pinpointing it to photographs or recordings that was made by our Hubble Space Telescope, which at that time was the best technological device that we had at that time.
Was this generated by extraterrestrial beings?
Yes, ma'am. There are other star maps in other facilities or structures around the planet, but at the one in Antarctica that I was in, that was the only panel that had that star map that showed the other 2 universes. All the other star maps was just of our known universe.
Did any astronomical type of scientist try to explain to you guys what they thought This star map made by extraterrestrials of showing, I'm going to say, one universe, ours, and then two others.
What I could wrap my brain around was all three star maps. The astrophysicist that was trying to explain it to me explained it to me like this. Each star map had one focal point. It was like telling a story. It showed our Milky Way. It always started at our Milky Way, inside our universe. And each pinpoint that you could go to and relate to that's been proven is like a stepping stone. This is where you start from, our Milky Way. And each point tells you this is where it's at. In all three star maps that I know of.
To experiment with the star map from Spartan 1, we made a Photoshop exact match to Spartan 1's star map. He implied to me that he had original photos and/or sketches of the Antarctica door with the black sun and star map. With our green Photoshop star map, we can control its orientation, and I wanted to see what would happen if we superimposed our green star map over the Orion constellation. And specifically, could we find a match of the three belt stars of Orion that have been written about in Earth history for thousands of years? First, here is what the Orion constellation looks like in a night sky on Earth. We have labeled the three belt stars Mintaka, Alilam, and Alnightak. Our human point of view is standing on the surface of our planet and looking up and outward into stars like these that are part of the Milky Way galaxy that our solar system orbits. What happens if we take Spartan 1 star map and see if it matches any of the three belt stars in this Orion map? We tried two different orientations, one with the long arm to the right, as in the original Spartan 1 drawing, and then flipped our green star map to make the long arm extend to the left. When we did the flip, it appears that we have some matches. And when we superimpose Spartan 1's star map that we made all green, there is a close match of the three belt stars in the black and white Orion map and Spartan 1's star map. Spartan 1 stressed that each of the different star maps carved in the black basalt Antarctica doors always had the same focal point, the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So if you were making star maps, not for use from the surface of Earth, but for space travel from planets far beyond our solar system, the space travelers would likely make the maps from what they see approaching our solar system. And this would explain why we had to flip Spartan 1's star map 180 degrees in order to match what we humans see of Orion in the night sky from Earth. But that means the original star map, carved in the black basalt 2 miles under Antarctic ice, was carved from a view on the other side of the Orion constellation, looking toward Earth from light years away. In this Pioneer 10 gold plaque by astronomers Carl Sagan and Frank Drake, it shows that the Earth is the third planet from the Sun, coming from the Sun outward. What we have just discussed going into the star map in Antarctica is that they were constructed by intelligences looking at this solar system from out beyond the solar system coming toward the Earth. And in the cuneiform of the Sumerians and the Anunnaki thousands of years ago, Enlil, ruler of the Earth, was depicted with 7 circles. In this very important and historic book, 1976 copyright, The 12th Planet by Zecharia Sitchin, he deals with the cuneiform about the 7 circles and the fact that Enlil, who was the ruler of Earth, always referred to this planet that we're on as the seventh planet. And Zecharia Sitchin writes on page 261, our astronomy is geared to the notion that Earth is the third planet, which indeed it is if one begins the count from the center of our system at the sun. But to someone nearing our solar system from the outside, as depicted here in this illustration at the far right, is Pluto was once there as a planet. The first planet to be encountered would be Pluto, the second Neptune, the third Uranus, not Earth, the fourth would be Saturn with the rings, the fifth would be big striped Jupiter, the sixth would be red Mars, and Earth would be the seventh. And this was the understanding in the cuneiform by Zecharia Sitchin as he did all of that work to do this very important book, The 12th Planet. And I have been rereading this book again. I read it all the way back somewhere in the beginning of the 80s. Now it has a lot more meaning today than it did then. And I can't help but wonder, could it be that it's the progenitors, the Anunnaki, from however long ago, hundreds of thousands of years, that are the ones who built the huge, gigantic structures in what we know as Antarctica, when they were actively on this planet for so long, building all kinds of huge structures that we see in Mesopotamia, but may have been all over the planet, may have been throughout the solar system. And what is their strange, mysterious Nibiru? Was it actually a spaceship? Or was it a body far out beyond this solar system that they somehow used as a base to come into this system, claimed this planet as theirs, and set about the manipulation of DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien? And they did not want Homo sapien to be equal with them. They always wanted Homo sapien to do work for them. Is the legacy today, as we now are heading out back to Mars, where they allegedly once also had a base, is that what we will be finding in our solar system? The legacy, the residue, pyramids, and maybe even stone stelae that have the cuneiform that we have been mystified by in many ways on our planet, and that what Spartan 1 saw in Antarctica may have related to the language and the history of the Anunnaki in our planet. I hope that those of you who are thinking right now that you would like to know a lot more about this, to join me, because I'm going to try to do more beyond what I presented tonight. I think that this is close to at least a position we should all be taking of thinking about, if we're coming into our solar system, what would be encountered. And I want to thank, he's a radio engineer in the Pacific Northwest. His first name is Matt. He asked to remain anonymous, but he contacted me with an email after seeing one of my Earthfiles streaming and asked about the possibility that the star map, or all of the star maps in Antarctica, could be done from the outside in. I thank you, Matt, and I thank all of you who are thinking about these difficult mysteries and sending me your ideas, your questions. That's how we keep going forward together. I hope for a long time in these Earthfiles live streams, and I hope that you will urge everybody you know to subscribe so we can keep boosting our subscription numbers. We're over 130,000, and let's keep going. And I thank every one of you for having your minds open, the courage to keep exploring, and I will try to keep bringing you as much as I keep learning from whistleblowers and others and sharing for your feedback. And now, Peggy, I'm so interested in what people's comments and questions might be tonight.
Hi, Linda. First, I'd like to thank all of the super chats, and it's a long list tonight, so please bear with me.
Oh, wow.
I really like to thank Manny, Kristen, Galaxy Wolf 416, Terry, Peter Van Horn the Fourth, David Goldridge, the Rabbit Monk, Matthew, Linda, Jacqueline, Renee, Ken, and Kano. Thank you so much, everyone, for your super chats.
Gosh, I'm overwhelmed. Thank you so much. I hope that you mean this as a kind of, Linda, keep going, keep doing this, and you guys hang in with me. It means everything to feel the support. So thank you, thank you, thank you. What about questions?
I would love to continue on with the Antarctica theme, and somebody wants to know, do you think there's an area of Antarctica that behaves much like the Bermuda Triangle?
That's a very good question. You have to start with what exactly is the Bermuda Triangle, and remember that story I did last year of the man who was describing having been in the military when there was a kind of yacht craft with a family on it, and that they disappeared to the world, to everybody, going back into the 1950s. And then he was a military person who was on a large ship, and they were on a completely different military operation out in the Bermuda Triangle, but they see this fresh-looking craft, and they head toward it, and he was one of the people who boarded, one of the military people who boarded, and they found like a diary that was being written on a date in 1956, and it was as if the ship had never had a scratch, no signs of water. It was perfectly preserved. And when he contacted me to talk about this, because it was his firsthand military experience, we talked about the mystery of dimensional transfers or timeline transfers. In his case, there was a huge storm, and he drew a picture that I used on the live stream, and had a strange purple color, and it was in that storm that they, after the storm was coming down, getting more gentle, that they saw that craft. Is it possible that electromagnetic lightning thunder in big storms can occasionally do something that either crosses a timeline and the ship moved, the craft, the yacht, moved maybe on a 90-degree angle or some angle out of this timeline into another, or it was a dimensional shift, sort of, I don't know what the distinction is really myself between something jumping a timeline and jumping a dimension, but I'm assuming there is a difference, but the concept is the same. And that maybe it was the huge storm that got the yacht in another dimension or timeline, and then they are there, and there was another big storm that brought the ship back. It's so difficult, and yet this is not the only story that I and others who are investigative reporters have heard from people who have lived in Florida or North Carolina and that area and have gone out onto the ocean there and been in what they call the Bermuda Triangle, because there are so many weird disappearances and every once in a while reappearances. If anybody listening now works in a military or a science capacity, who may have firsthand information about studying or investigating or knowing about some other facts having to do with the Bermuda Triangle. And this whole question of what can suddenly make a magnetic field or a timeline do some kind of a slip, a time slip or shift. I would love to hear from people who might have other firsthand knowledge. Along these lines, I am remembering that I was in France. This probably goes back 20 years ago, maybe even further back. And I was in the big, huge garden museum there, and outside of Paris. And a security guard was talking with some people in a group, and they were asking about whether or not in these big French gardens in the history of France, are there mysterious things? That's what they were talking about. Had there been ghosts? Have people seen apparitions? That was what the people were asking. And the guard said, well, one day, 2 women from the United States came up to one of our guards and said, when was the bridge over the lake out in the gardens built? And the security guard said, there is no lake. There is no bridge. And they said, we just came from there. We went up onto the bridge over the lake. That same year, they were doing renovations, and in around one of the big fireplaces was a rolled up piece of paper, and they pulled it out. And it was an architectural drawing that had a bridge and a lake at this big, what was once upon a time like big gardens for one of the royalty. And it was exactly as the women had described. And that leads to the question, are all concepts that are worked on in the human mind, do they end up being manifested some way, no matter where, no matter how? Even if it's in another timeline or another dimension, like thought keeps branching is the issue. And that even though it was only pen and ink to the architect, that it ended up somehow being translated into the minds of 2 women in the 20th century in that big French garden in what would have been about 20, 30 years ago. And this, I think, relates exactly to these questions about the Bermuda Triangle and the others around the planet, where clearly there are something can move time, move space. Don't know exactly what words we want to say here, but time and dimensions. And then something happens and they become accessible. It really expands our whole relationship with the universe, because increasingly this matter universe that we are in seems to be only sort of one slice of something in the cosmos that is so huge and multifaceted, and it begins to feel to me like we are just babies, as I've said before, beginning to look beyond our face and the room we're in to a completely different universe relationship, to something much bigger and much more complex. I find it exciting. I hope you do too. What about another question?
Another viewer had an idea that star maps, could these be doors to entrances to jump rooms to different locations within that star map?
Yeah, Spartan One and I talked about this when we were doing the interview, and he thinks that the likelihood is that he talked about how every star map on every door had one same baseline, if you want to put it out, where the Milky Way galaxy, the center of the Milky Way galaxy, was the central focal point for each of the star maps, no matter what the rest of the star map was describing. And so it would seem to me, I'm only speculating, that if there is a common denominator to the star maps and it's at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, it may be that that big black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, if you know what you are doing as an evolved intelligence, that you can use it to jump portals. Or that the black hole has some dimensional relationship to the Milky Way galaxy that they use as their center baseline. But just as Spartan 1 said, that we now, because of guidance by non-humans, that we had a portal in Gakona, Alaska, that hooked into a place in Hawaii, and that he said it is not the way that the movies in Hollywood describe it. It isn't light zipping by or a feeling of movement. He said you walk in a hallway and you get to an intersection and you simply cross that intersection from Gakona, Alaska, and you are in Hawaii, and it is just steps. For those of us who are outside of the Black programs that have been working with non-humans for decades and who have worked on building time machines and building these portals, it's hard for us to relate. But I think that when Spartan 1, for those of you who have seen my documentary, and I urge all of you to go to Vimeo or to Amazon Prime and get Antarctica, Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice, and you will hear the whole discussion that Spartan 1 has about seeing one of these portals for himself and comparing it to what a Navy SEAL trained on the water as a Navy agent. He said that the portal that he was shown was like a moon pool, but instead of being round, it was square. But it had the same liquid, watery kind of reflection to it that apparently is part of that process of going down a hall to an intersection and then passing, just walking, that these portals are part of that construction, and that he had seen the one that was square instead of round. I think that, again, if any of you out there listening now or know anyone who has firsthand information about these portals on the Earth, moving through time, moving point to point, because you're a physicist and you've worked on these projects, you might be retired, and you could help me with more information. I sure welcome hearing from those of you who have firsthand information about technologies that I have no question exist, but they aren't shared with you and me in the public so far, which is one of the reasons for that, getting that headline, "We're not alone in this universe." Let's go forward as a whole planet with all people beginning to be educated by governments about what we have, what we know, and what our relationship is to the Anunnaki, to those that were here as the Sumerians, and where are they now, and could they come back, and what would happen? What about another question?
A viewer wants to know, have any of the Spartans, have they seen an extraterrestrial themselves in Antarctica, or even pictures of them?
Yes, part 1. He describes, I think it's in what is called in the 65-minute documentary, in part 2, he goes into having been shown photographs of the humanoids associated with the structures in Antarctica, that he is walking the halls where the green glow moves with him as he walks, 13-acre rooms, huge tall ceilings, and that the humanoids in the photograph or photographs that he was shown, he described as no hair, no eyebrows, but very human-like, bigger heads in size coming up, and taller. And I think it's a valid question that sounds somewhat like looking at the carved stone in Mesopotamia on this planet today of figures like Shamash, the sun god, and the others, Enlil Enki. They are in the rock in Iran and Iraq and Syria now. They are shown as very humanoid looking, with a hat that goes up maybe over a cone-shaped head. That might be one of the differences. But looking very human and very tall. When you look at the carved drawings or the drawings of the carvings, or you go to the British Museum or in France, and you see whole wall sections, these so-called Sumerian gods, who were Enlil Enki, I think that they were real beings. And in the documentary, when we were doing the interview, I asked Spartan 1, do you think that the humanoid that you were shown the photograph of could be Anunnaki? And he said, that's what I understand they were. Well, that throws it all into an amazing timeline question. If the last time that Antarctica was warm and there were not 2 to 3 miles of ice on it was 34 million years ago, were the Anunnaki from another planet in the solar system, maybe beyond to Sirius, Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, who knows how far out from here in the Milky Way galaxy, if they came to Earth, maybe they came in waves. Maybe they were here 270 million years ago, and then 200 million, and then for reasons unknown, and then they come again when there is Pangea is splitting apart, and the big part of Antarctica is moving from South Africa down to the South Pole, and then maybe there is a decision for them to stay in the solar system for a period of time as rulers of Mars and Earth and throughout the solar system. And then maybe, as John Brandenburg, the nuclear physicist, wrote in Death on Mars, his book, about the fact that there are xenon 129 levels and other signals on Mars, that there may have been large nuclear explosions, or hydrogen, he hypothesizes hydrogen bomb explosions, that there were wars. Well, when you read Zecharia Sitchin's The 12th Planet, you get into the chapter about the Anunnaki on Earth claiming Earth. You find that there were these huge disagreements between the so-called owner, ruler of Earth, Enlil, the 7 circles, the 7th planet from the outside in, and that Enlil wanted to destroy all of the standing up primates. And it was Enki, his brother, who argued on behalf of preserving humans, and they are always fighting about this. And this is one of the controversies around the Anunnaki. Did the brothers fight? Did they split off, one wanting to destroy Earth life and the other not wanting to, and that somehow the Enki side prevailed, that all of Earth life and humanity in the form that it was not destroyed? But on the other side of that ledger is the implication that Enlil and Enki, coming from some other place in the Milky Way galaxy, would have weapons that would be in atomic explosion category, and that they could do tremendous destruction. And I think another part of Zecharia Sitchin's book, The 12th Planet, he says that he is translating from the cuneiform, that what Enlil chose to be the huge destruction of the humans that he disliked so much was a huge flood. And it describes in great detail by Zecharia Sitchin's translation that the whole planet was covered with water, and what was left were Earth life had pretty much died out, and it was all mud. And it was Enki who came back with forces and apparently arguing even to his brother who caused it all, that he, Enki, wanted to bring life back and have it flourish on the earth. How strange if this were a true history, that intelligences from someplace else would come here because this was a beautiful laboratory planet with so much water, and then they wanted gold and they wanted the metals that I've understood from people in the current interstellar trade route agency, that's what we have been doing since the 70s, is we've been working with some collaboration with non-humans to get gold and to get rare metals. And in the 12th Planet, Zecharia Sitchin talks about how the cuneiform translates that that's what the Anunnaki wanted from Earth. They wanted gold and they wanted rare metals, and that one of the ones that was considered valuable to the ETs and to life on Earth was molybdenum, a rare metal that happens to be necessary in the DNA molecule of every life form on Earth. You wouldn't have the DNA molecule without molybdenum. And on this planet, there is, here and there is molybdenum. So if they came for metals, and Enlil, the owner and ruler, decided that he wanted to take already evolving primates and manipulate the DNA to make them into gold slaves and metal slaves, and then finds the population to be offensive to him, even though his brother and others seem to love evolving Homo sapien. It is odd that today in 2020, that all of that history and all of those carvings that have been in Mesopotamia would, throughout the evolving history of humans with humans, it always was relegated to mythology. It's always been one of those stressors on the earth that the human family was never to be told the truth. But it may be, if you reread Zecharia Sitchin's The 12th Planet today, get the book, and start reading it and see how relevant it seems to all the questions and mysteries that we are trying to understand today about our solar system, the Earth, the true history. Zecharia Sitchin and people who have written about the Anunnaki, they may actually have a really correct insight into a lot of the details that are both disturbing because power brokers, the power brokers of Earth, no matter how many times they have changed, the Anunnaki were major power brokers and constructors on this planet for a long time. And if they built all these huge mammoth structures 2 to 3 miles under the ice in Antarctica, where did they go? Why did they leave if they did leave? Or is it all powered, all artificial intelligence controlled because they've never truly left, that they are part of the contingency that has come and gone on this planet and is in that sentence from people in the DIA, CIA, NSA, that 3 competing in conflict extraterrestrial biological civilizations have been manipulating DNA on this planet and terraforming this planet for at least 270 million years. You've heard me talk about that with the DIA analyst. Maybe that's the category that the humanoids without hair and maybe with those hats are the ones who were in Mesopotamia and built ziggurats and built the huge architecture in Antarctica for reasons that we have never been told. And I assume then that there are those in MJ12, Majestic 12. That is what Enlil and Enki considered the Anunnaki, that they were divided into the Majestic 12. That our government, the MJ12 people, know that it was and is the Anunnaki who built, have come and gone, may be out in another part of the Milky Way galaxy now, and may be returning. For those of you who have followed my Earthfiles.com reports, you will know that back about 4 years ago, I was doing a series of reports about an Army sergeant and his family who left down in the southeast in a transfer to Fort Collins Army in Colorado. And that he started getting binary zeros and ones downloaded, and his wife was terrified because she would be waked up at night and he was saying zeros and ones. And then he ends up starting to write them down, and I and others helped him do translations. And one of the last ones from 2 years ago, the zeros and ones translated into Sumerian and various forms, Akkadian, and that I took the zeros and ones translation that I had to a scholar, a Mesopotamian scholar in the University of Pennsylvania. And the translation of that last, we'll call it 0 and 1 translation that the Army guy got to me 2 years ago, is that Nabu, who was like the 3rd or 4th in command below Enlil and Enki, Nabu would be returning to Ki, the Sumerian Anunnaki original 2 letters translation for Earth. Wouldn't that be something? If Nabu, Enlil, Enki, and all of that group suddenly returned to Earth, I wonder what would happen. Let's see. I think I'm at the end of this hour. I hope that all of you who have been provoked by the content tonight and your own mysteries that you're interested in will get in touch with me, and through email or ProtonMail or hard mail or FedEx, and that we can keep unfolding as much as we can on these fundamental mysteries about who are we humans, who were the Anunnaki and Sumerian really, what is the legacy that they have left for us in architecture, not only in Iran, Iraq, Syria, and the Middle East, but perhaps they are the ones who built the original huge structures, maybe 34 million years ago, in that big, huge land at the South Pole that we call Antarctica. Thanks. I look forward to being with you again next week.